Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for making MTN your source for news. I'm Tim McGonigal. We begin with a historic day in the Treasure State on the coronavirus front. Today, the highest single-day jump in COVID-19 cases in Montana since the virus was first reported in the state on March 13th. The state reported 37 additional cases of COVID-19 this morning. Since noon, there's been 12 more cases, including 3 new cases in Ravalli County. The previous highest single-day total for new cases was back on March 26th, when the state reported 35 new cases. In total, there are currently 201 active cases in the state. Well, the rise in case numbers after 6 weeks of extremely low counts and the start of reopening the state's economy, Governor Steve Bullock and top health officials say the surge is not entirely unexpected, but that it's also framed how Montanans can slow it down. MTN's Mike Dennison has our story.
At a Capitol News conference Wednesday, Jim Murphy, the head of the State Communicable Disease Control and Prevention Bureau, said the main factors are more contact among people, in groups or at work, as the economy reopened, and more available testing. For example, an outbreak occurred among healthcare workers in Missoula that was traced to cases in Helena and maybe elsewhere.
It shows how contagious this virus is and how even in a workplace setting, not social distancing or not using PPE all the time can lead to a pretty quick outbreak.
In Miles City, where cases jumped dramatically this month, health department tracers identified several group gatherings where infections occurred and that had spread to 4 other counties.
So if you liken it to like a wildfire, right, you have a spark that's going into another county and setting off another potential cluster of cases.
In the last week, new cases have been reported in 24 Montana counties, including some that previously had no cases. 29 of those cases were in Bighorn County, home to the Crow Indian Reservation, where Anderson says many people tested had shown no symptoms of the disease, but likely were still spreading it. The contact tracing identifies who had contact with those infected, tests them, and directs them to quarantine, or if they have the disease, isolate until they recover. Chief State Medical Officer Greg Holtzman says the virus can survive outside a warm body, so if the transmission can be stopped, so can the disease. He says that's why it's vitally important for people to continue with social distancing and take precautions like wearing masks when they can't distance.
We don't want to go backwards. We want people to feel safe. We want people to be safe. And we want schools to reopen in the fall. And yes, there are some inconveniences, and we are all going to have to deal with that. But those are so minor when we consider the alternatives. We cannot do this alone. I cannot stress that enough. We cannot do this alone. We might disagree on everything else, but we are all in this together.
Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Montana still has one of the lowest infection rates in the nation, even though its reported cases overall jumped by 30% in the last 9 days. Well, after 59 years, a Great Falls business is closing its doors. Cartwheel Casino and Liquor Store closed March 19th and reopened under restrictions on May 4th. But as patrons return to a new normal, owner and president Joe McKinney says it will be without his store. He says the COVID-19 pandemic is the straw that broke the camel's back. They'll be working to reduce their inventory over the next few days before closing their doors. McKinney thanked employees and patrons for their time over the years and said it's the relationships that he will miss the most.
It isn't so much about gambling. It isn't so much about winning money. It's a place to sit next to a friend and be served by people you know. We become friends.
All bottles are 20% off at the Cartwheel Casino and Liquor Store on 10th Avenue South. Customers will find a commemorative sticker on each bottle highlighting the store's 59 years in business. The casino has already closed. Hours are 11:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. daily. Well, if another stimulus package is approved, there's a $4,000 travel tax credit on the table. It's an effort to kickstart the hospitality industry. It would cover vacation-related expenses through 2021. Industry experts say there needs to be a way to jumpstart the economy, but they agree it may not be the right time for travel right now. And we're seeing a continuation of the first wave of coronavirus. A second wave is expected between the end of summer and early fall. Well, tonight we have an update on the Montana Relief Fund. Thanks to the generosity of Montanans over the last month and a half, more than $336,000 has been raised. In the coming weeks, the Grant Advisory Committee will begin the process of selecting and distributing funds to rural and tribal communities affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The fund was specifically created to support those communities that do not have established community-specific funds. For many rural communities, losing a service can mean having to travel more than 100 miles to find its replacement.
One thing that we know is that often in these more rural communities, those nonprofits are doing a lot. Sometimes they're even serving multiple purposes. And when those services start to go away, there's not really a backup plan or a backup organization.
The economic impacts of the pandemic will be felt for a long time, and if you're able, please help us make a difference and make a donation to the Rebound Montana Relief Fund or one of the other community relief funds. Well, with Grant off today, we're tapping into our talented meteorological resources here at MTN to keep you updated on the weather. And so a familiar face joins us tonight from the Weather Center from our sister station KTVH. Here's Curtis Grebenitz.
Yeah, thanks for taking it easy on me. I'm the new guy here, Tim. Well, good evening, everybody. What a beautiful day it has become across a lot of the area. Big difference from yesterday at this time when we had some mean thunderstorms that were moving through. You can see a few of those storms still down along Interstate 90 in the southern southeast part of the state, and northeast Montana out the High Line had a couple of thunderstorms earlier, but you could see that moving into the Dakotas. Yesterday we were pushing 90 in some areas. Today a little more of a refreshing air mass moving in and the numbers a little cooler, but there is another warm up on the way and another sunny day for Friday. Soak up that sunshine because in the full forecast we'll be talking about a different kind of soaking, a soaking rain, and it will affect not only the weekend but parts of next week as well with below average temperatures. And will it finally warm up, almost be normal, so to speak, by the 4th of July? I'll have more on the full forecast later on the show.
All right, thanks, Curtis. We'll see you then. Well, the proposal of a church moving into a space in downtown has the city of Great Falls considering special ordinances in the area. MTN's Isaiah Dunk tells us what the city has to consider.
Montana law doesn't allow for liquor licenses to be issued within 600 feet of a church, setting up a possible conflict in downtown Great Falls after the Calvary Chapel recently filed for a conditional use permit to use the empty space at 427 Central Avenue. Soon after the filing, Great Falls Planning and Community Development Director Craig Raymond said his department began receiving calls from the downtown community.
Once word started getting out on the street that a church was wanting to locate in the downtown, we started hearing about some concern from the community.
The proposed location wouldn't affect the nearby drinking establishments that already exist, but the worry is about future development of bars and taverns downtown. Luckily, state law does grant the city the option to create an ordinance that would sidestep the 600-foot rule, meaning a win-win situation is possible.
It was kind of putting the city commission on a collision course to make a decision. What's more important to you, bars and taverns or a church? Which is kind of an awkward, challenging position to be put into. Once we learned that it might be possible for us to alleviate some of that inherent conflict, we're going to bring it to the city commission and see if they happen to agree with us that maybe they can be located closer together.
Raymond said his department plans to build a recommendation for both the church's permit and a new ordinance at the same time, likely in late July. From there, it goes to the city commission, with a final decision not likely until August or September. In Great Falls, Isaiah Dunk, MTN News.
Well, following the cancellation of the last oil and gas lease in the Badger II Medicine area, the Blackfeet Nation has released a legislative proposal to permanently protect it as a cultural heritage area. The proposed Badger II Medicine Protection Act would establish formal tribal consultation with the U.S. Forest Service to contribute to future management decisions. The 130,000-acre wildland is sacred to the Blackfeet Nation, and tribal members still practice traditional ceremonies there. The act would prohibit construction, commercial timber, and motorized recreation in the area. The proposal also guarantees continued public access for hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, and other traditional uses. It also keeps grazing rights intact on the land. The tribe says it's an opportunity to protect the cultural significance of the area and ensure it's not lost to future generations.
We've been subject to a lot of inequality treatment And this would be something that would allow us to kind of rest at ease, that our area is protected.
The act was drafted in partnership with Blackfeet leaders, non-tribal neighbors, hunters, anglers, conservationists, ranchers, local landowners, and others. And the tribe hopes to have the act introduced before Congress in July. Well, today marks 70 years since the beginning of the Korean War. Coming up, hear from two Montanans who were in the trenches.
Powered by the Montana Television Network. The 5:30 news continues on Montana's News Leader.
Welcome back. Today marks the 70th anniversary of the beginning of the Korean War. It was on June 25th that North Korea declared war on South Korea. MTN's Phoenix O'Connor spoke with two Korean War veterans on their experiences.
They're a part of the silent generation, a small group born between the late 1920s and the early 1940s, a time of economic hardship from the Great Depression leading into World War II. They grew up with great pride in American freedoms.
The families talk about the pride of being an American. They talk about the past history of America, the different wars, War of 1812, 1776, the important stuff right here, to inculcate the idea that, hey, freedom is not free. We will take care of our own.
When the call came to help fight back communist North Korea's invasion of South Korea, some men were drafted into the war, while others enlisted on their own. How old were you when you first enlisted?
17.
So when you look at a 17-year-old now,
Unreal that they would take a young fellow like that and send him to war.
The total U.S. casualties during the war, approximately 140,000 were killed, missing in action, and wounded. 4,267 were United States Marines.
To see some of your buddies blowing up in front of you on a patrol was something else.
We went in at the Incheon landing over the side of a ship. And as I told him before, I don't ever recall having any training for that. Spooky, going over the side of that boat. But anyway, we went over the side of the boat into landing craft and made our way to Seoul. Where we went, we walked. And that's why I'm so short.
During the war, Christmas cards lightened the service members' spirits, as well as teasing each other.
You set up Marines to go down to Seoul to pick up food, beer for the Army? Something's wrong. We come up and we're in the 7th Marine Regiment area and we're dumping off beer cans.
They must have drunk all of our beer and took all of our jackets, because I never did see anything like that.
In Helena, Phoenix O'Connor, MTN News.
All right, my grandfather was a paratrooper in the Korean War. Maybe that's why I like to skydive. How about today's temperatures out there? Highs in the 70s and 80s. I'd do it again, but tomorrow might be even better. More in the forecast coming up next.
Thanks.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm meteorologist Curtis Grevenitz here with your forecast. What a beautiful day across the area here. Nice blue sky. Even the clouds were kind of cool out there. In the capital area, also really nice conditions there with clear skies for the most part, and temperatures, I would say, very agreeable for a lot of the states. Currently in the 70s and the 80s, a little cooler down there in Cody, Wyoming, with some thunderstorms that are moving through. Here on the Doppler radar, you can see some of the showers and thunderstorms that were around. This is part of the same system that came through last night with a few severe thunderstorms. Blasted Kalispell, blasted around the Highwood area, also up there around Fort Benton. But there you can see the last little bit of that storm moving off towards the south. Northeast Montana, we had a couple of these showers and thunderstorms. Anybody want to do some evening fishing on Fort Peck there? Looking pretty good. And a couple of isolated showers and thunderstorms earlier this afternoon, but you can see the trend, everything kind of drying out as high pressure is moving in. The big picture, and that disturbance with all of its lightning now moving down into Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, and Nevada. Nice to see those folks down there getting some precipitation with fire season not too far away from us here. So here's what will happen. A beautiful evening. You have outdoor plans tonight. The weather should be really good. Let's go back to that. I kind of fat-fingered that a little bit here, but looking ahead at pretty nice conditions again through tonight into tomorrow morning. We'll generally be looking at skies that will be clear through the overnight hours, and tomorrow should be a really great day. For tonight, temperatures down into the 40s and the 50s for overnight lows, and in the western sky going down, we've got that waxing moon. It was just a little thin crescent over the last couple of nights, but you might want to check that out, and you should be able to see that with the clear skies. And for tomorrow, looking at a warm day, warmer than today, almost like where we were yesterday as far as highs go, up into the 80s, even in a couple of locations up there on the High Line. That's a hot day for Havre, 90 degrees, 91 in Glasgow, 93 out in Jordan. We should be in the 80s along Interstate 15 here, so a pretty nice day for tomorrow. Now Saturday, this looks good, doesn't it? Temperatures in the 80s again, a couple of 90s here. However, there will be a cold front coming through the area in the afternoon and the evening. So get out a little earlier on Saturday because those thunderstorms will be scattered through a lot of the central part of the state heading through the afternoon and the evening again. And that's the beginning of a bigger pattern change. Now looking way down the road, the next 6 to 10 days, how much of the west is much cooler than average, warmer temperatures through the Great Lakes, and also looking at wetter than average weather as we go through the next 6 to 10 days. What's coming up in about 10 days? Well, of course, the Independence Day holiday here, and here's the 7-day forecast taking you all the way through next week. 88 tomorrow, enjoy it. We'll have a temperature about 82 or so for a high on Saturday before scattered afternoon thunderstorms move through. Sunday, I'm going to try to hold off the rain for you until the afternoon, but rain likely increasing through the morning hours, and rain will continue all the way through Monday. Look at that, the final Monday in June. High temperatures only in the 50s, and unsettled weather will continue for most of the state for most of next week. But it does look like as we get into the July 4th holiday, Independence Day, we'll start to clear things out and warm things up.
All right, thanks, Curtis. Well, one man's dream is making it all the way to national TV. See how he's empowering Blackfeet tribal members next.
Powered by the Montana Television Network. The 530 News continues on Montana's News Leader.
A Browning Boxing Club will be featured on national television next week. MTN's Tom Wiley caught up with the club's founder, who hopes the exposure can help send a message.
In 2003, Frankie Kipp started the Blackfeet Nation Boxing Club in Browning for a simple reason: to teach youth on the reservation, especially women and young girls, to defend themselves.
I started seeing girls getting bullied. Yes, you know, they were coming up to me, they were getting bullied, and we had actually had a couple in their 20s and stuff wanting to learn how to take up for themselves because they were getting abused or something or other. We start hearing about young ladies being taken from Indian country, and so I started training my daughter. If something happens, at least you're gonna know how to fight for your life.
Since starting the club, Kipp has trained over 500 boxers on the reservation.
Some of the girls that come into the boxing club have real low self-esteem, and the confidence that they get from boxing is just phenomenal.
And next week, Kipp and his pupils will be featured on a big stage.
I started thinking, you know, how can we keep these girls from putting themselves in harm's way? The only answer was this club.
The club will be featured in a documentary called Blackfeet Boxing, Not Invisible, set to air Tuesday on ESPN.
It was emotional in the sense that, you know, I was a probation officer prior, and I put a lot of things upstairs in my head, unpleasant things, you know. When I was doing this, I talked to a lot of kids out of suicide, the youngest 8 years old, wanting to take their lives, you know. The documentary, it brought a lot of memories back up, you know. There was a few that were real unpleasant about maybe break down, during the interview, you know, because
Blackfeet Boxing is a film about fighting for respect, identity, and acknowledgement. This film details the story of Ashley Loring Heavy Runner and other missing and murdered Indigenous women, and Kip hopes the large audience will help spread awareness to the silent epidemic.
I think so. I think it would be awareness not just on our reservation, but right now with most of the Indian nations, that this is what's happening. People are coming up, girls are coming up missing. We have unsolved murders. You know, it's a trip. You know, some of the things that we see, I do think that it's going to bring up some awareness with that.
Tom Wiley, MTN News.
Blackfeet Boxing has already won awards at several documentary film festivals. It will air for the first time on television Tuesday at 5:30 on ESPN. We'll be right back.
Well, let's check out the 7-day forecast. A gorgeous end to the work week. Some storms move in Saturday afternoon, and then a big rainstorm moving in for a lot of the state on Sunday, lasting into the next week.
All right, so the moral of the story, get out tomorrow and enjoy the nice weather, because over the weekend we could be seeing some rain.
Soak up the sunshine before you soak up the rain.
There you go. So do some soaking nonetheless, whatever the case. All right, that's all the time we have. We'll see you back here tonight at 10.